This is the PowerShell Podcast, PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit Edition. Think of it as PowerShell After Dark, the bar sessions. A behind-the-scenes look at the PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit After Dark. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
So, gentlemen, we're gathered around this lovely table in apparently what's called a quiet room, but I'll be honest, it's not that quiet. There's no pounding disco, but I'm joined with Gainesville friends, Chris Masters, Joe Gasper, MVP, and my friend from somewhere that's not Florida. I have no clue where because it's not Florida.
Pittsburgh.
Rob Derickson. Did I say it right?
Yes.
That's pretty good. Met you first in 2018. Some interesting stories from that year we were sharing. You know, we were both young and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and it's great to be able to check in with you so many years later.
It sounds like it was great to survive those, so
yeah.
Glad you're able to still continue to come.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, Joe, and we're here to get stronger together and survive. But back to
you can be our honorary Florida man here, though.
Yeah, I'm glad I've been allowed to come back after 2018.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of Florida man jokes coming my way this week. I'm like, really? Is that all that Florida is to you? I mean, we're so much more. But alas, here we are. To get things started, I want to ask, starting with Rob, what is one tip you would give to someone out there who's not here this week? Maybe it's based on something you've seen, or maybe it's based on something you really care about, but what's one tip you'd like to share?
I feel so put on the spot right now.
Yeah, don't answer it wrong.
One tip I would like to share. I mean, I would say you don't have to come here to get involved in the community. Join the Discord. Ask for help if you're stuck. And this community is great. Like, they will reach out and walk you through whatever you need. Explain it step by step. A lot of times, if you say you don't understand it, people in the Discord have an insane amount of patience. I don't know how they do it every day. Same people.
Let's go. To my Gainesville friends, starting with you, Joe. What's one tip you sort of have for someone who's not here from this week?
Someone who's not here from this week?
Yeah.
Well, I would say wait for the videos because there's been really great sessions. I came here specifically with some goals in mind and like things I wanted to, like, I want to learn this. I want to do this. If I can do it while I'm here, because I got people who can teach me and learn from. I've been able to do that. So there's been really some great sessions. Watch the videos that are going to come out. And there's going to be a lot to learn from this. You don't, like Rob said, you don't have to be here, but this is my first time here. I'm glad I made it. Glad I had this opportunity. And I hope I can come back and be part of this group of people that are here.
Yeah.
And at this unconference, as we learned. So it's been a really great week.
It was a fun experience. Chris, your first time as well?
Yep.
How was it?
Time. Probably my favorite conference I've ever been to. Been to several security conferences, but yeah, I'd say this is probably my favorite one.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
okay, good.
It's PowerShell, so
Yeah.
what's not to like?
And there's even been a lot of security here too. You know, you get kind of those both worlds here if you want to get into those sessions.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it because I remember you asking, like, hey, is it worth going? I was like, oh, yeah, 100%. And I was like, okay, well, if he goes, I kind of totally gave my recommendation. So glad to hear that it worked out for you.
And I'm glad for the recommendation as well because, you know, with one conference a year, budget type thing, I think this was the one. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that because I definitely always on the podcast recommend people to check out PowerShell Summit. So glad to hear from some people that it was helpful for them. And I remember on Monday night, I was meeting this new guy. I was talking with him, and as soon as he said PowerShell Universal, I was like, oh, have I got the guy for you? And then I think you've been friends with him ever since, right?
Yeah, you're talking about Victor, we've talked a lot. Showed him, or certainly talked about a bunch of stuff. He showed some of his things, and exchanged some information, which was my real goal here, is to meet new people in the community that are doing some of the things that I'm doing professionally, and that's really worked out. Taking home some really good contacts and some new friends.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. Well, I love to hear that.
Chris, when you talked at one of our recent Gainesville PowerShell user groups, and wasn't recorded because it was a little
live data.
Secure. Yeah, exactly. And it was on PowerShell Universal. I mean, I left that thinking you have something that you're doing that is amazing, and hopefully come and talk about it. And this is like the great platform to do it. We saw at the lightning rounds today some PowerShell Universal show up.
Couple of them,
and I was thinking, like, you need to be up there. From what I saw, it was really, really cool stuff. So I'm glad you're in Gainesville, and something I can learn from, because it's definitely on my radar.
Yeah, we got some really amazing stuff, and super glad to share it. And in the hopes that I'm going to learn something from them in the future as well. Yeah.
And I want to give a special shout out while we have Chris on the podcast, because we got the Gainesville PowerShell user group, but half of those guys are from Lake City that Chris has inspired and sort of been leading, and he brings them out, and it's a really good time. So shout out to Chris for building community in his own right. Even though it's his first time at Summit, he's been really about this PowerShell stuff for a while. Yeah,
super great team that I get to work with. So they all really love it, and the infection is real. As people get to see the power of the shell, they're getting hooked on it.
Oh yeah,
love that. So I want to share a little story before we move on, because it's on top of mind. So I was sitting in the hotel lobby, and I saw someone, and it was like they were kind of looking around, like looking for somebody, and I put my hand up and waved, and they came on over, and I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm a big fan of the podcast." And I was like, "Oh, that's so awesome. I'm glad to hear that." And they shared some things, and it was kind of cool. And I was like, "Can I buy you a drink?" And I take them to the bar to buy him a drink. I've done this several times throughout the week. It's not that big of a deal. But it's a cool chance to kind of connect with people. And so he orders a drink, and they don't have the thing he wants, and they get an alternative. He's excited about it. And I get the drink. I get the bill. How much do you think this drink costs?
I don't
this
know.
hotel? I don't know.
$53
for one drink.
For one drink.
What kind of drink? How big
had
was
some
this
kind
drink?
of fancy, like vodka or something like that in it. But I looked at him. I was like, "Wow, I guess
that was from a shelf I could not reach."
Fortune favors the bold, apparently.
I'm wondering about the size of the drink.
I mean, it looked pretty small. And the worst thing was then we were like, we had to get going to the next place we were going to, and he just kind of drank it super quick, and it was like, "Oh, there goes the minis." All right. That random bar session aside, out of the way, I want to go around and ask you each something that I've asked a lot of people, which is, what is your one takeaway, the one goal you have with you, or the thing you need to learn about? Starting with you, Rob, what's one thing you're planning on approaching next, or a next item on your goals?
During the lightning demos, was it JB Lewis? He gave I can't remember what he called it. It was such a good name. Actually, I have
like training or something like that. PowerShell training community.
It was a PowerShell community of practice.
Right.
And yeah, I love that idea. Like just starting basically a user group at work. You don't have the pressure of trying to bring a speaker in every month. And I already I'm kind of the go-to person when someone has PowerShell questions. So having a group of people to kind of share in code reviews and learn together at work would be great. Just to spread more PowerShell in the office.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I've actually heard that from several people, that is such a helpful thing. I recommend it on the podcast all the time. Run internal PowerShell user groups. Don't be the only one running PowerShell and actually getting about it. Share it with your team, and you can do more. Joe, what's your one action item?
I don't I don't know. My brain's like exploding from this conference, so I'm not sure I have one. We'll see. But the community to practice. One goal I had was learning some better techniques around sharing code. So at our university, we've got a lot of PowerShell going on. We've got some great people who code, and we have GitHub Enterprise. And before we came, I stood up a repo that I'm preparing to try to release, get some code in there that's for all of our kind of departmental techs. So that's going out on the podcast. So I need to finish that. So that's the goal. Put that in there. Personally, I wanted to do better around taking code and turning my scripts into actual modules. And they might just be internal modules, but we've got some new people on my team who love PowerShell. I'm seeing what they're writing. I know some other people across campus. We're always touching Exchange, Active Directory. We don't need to be reinventing the wheel, all doing our own thing. Bringing that together, making sort of a module of a lot of these little pieces of things that we have to touch. Centrally collaborate on that. That's a big goal, big lofty goal, but we're going to do it.
Wow. Inspirational. Inspiring.
That's what this week has been. This is what it's been.
I'm very fueled up and excited and ready to go. Chris, what's your one takeaway from the week and one kind of goal you're looking for?
It's been a lot that I'm going to take away from it, but one of the big things, which I've already been kind of talking back home about, is some mob programming. So getting some of the team members that are learning PowerShell to get together and do the mob timing thing. So I looked up the timer that will put some of the people in a queue for the live share, and I think we're going to try that out. It sounded really neat. Sounded like a good way to engage multiple people that are kind of learning PowerShell in the beginning. So I think that's my big takeaway, because I've already been talking to people about it, and we're going to try that out.
Nice. Yeah, I highly recommend that. That's always great.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, mob programming is whenever, I guess, a bunch of people are in a live share and coding together. So you got your driver and then your navigator and then some, I guess, spectators, like backseat drivers, I guess, right? And then you kind of pass the driver along so that everybody gets a chance to code. Sorry, I didn't explain that.
Where did you hear about that?
That was some guy that did some talk.
I couldn't tell if it was me or not. I really couldn't, because I heard someone else mention it.
That was your talk.
Very cool. Well, that tells me that I should have probably given this talk to the Gainesville PowerShell user group a little sooner. But yeah, I love pair programming mostly for the educational aspect. It's been so helpful for me, and I've personally, once you get better at it, do it a few times, it's super helpful to allow other people to feel successful. Because I can solve a problem for them all day, but for them to feel like it's their win and allow them to get the success and to feel confident from it, it's a huge step in the right direction when you're dealing with something challenging like automation or scripting and things like that.
And shout out to Kevin. You weren't on that stage alone.
Shout out to Kevin Cephalou. I had him on the pod to talk about it. Shout out, Kevin. We put in some work to get ready for that one, so glad it went somewhat well. But, friends, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Sure thing.
Yeah, thank you for doing what you do.
It goes without saying, Andrew, this has been special to be on your cast and participate in this with you. Brief as it is, but sitting across from you, being able to do this live has been fun. So,
hey, we're doing it, man. And anytime you want to join for a full one, happy to go through the whole story and see where you ended up where you are, because it's, from what I've heard during our meetings and stuff, it's pretty exciting. So,
thank you.
Awesome. Well, take care, everybody. All right, take care.
So much.
Cheers. Another episode of PowerShell Bar Sessions. I'm joined with none other than Chris Nguyen on the Windows Terminal team, PM. Am I getting that right?
Yep, that's me, Chris Nguyen, PM for Windows Terminal.
Sweet. So you did a lightning demo today, so I got to see some of what's going on in your world. What was your lightning demo on today?
Yeah, it was about like pretty much the basics of what Windows Terminal was, and also like some of the cool things that can improve your productivity as a developer and also IT pro. So I went over things like profiles, some of the cool UI we have, like the suggestions UI, settings UI, and also like apparently like a really fan favorite was our rainbow frame. So like I don't know if like actually this is a podcast, so it's all audio, but like I basically made the terminal window like RGB. So just think of a rainbow frame around Windows Terminal.
Yeah, I like to talk about a lot of the ways people can customize tools like PowerShell and stuff like that in VS Code to be more in alignment to whatever is their preference. And I think it's really cool that same thing with Windows Terminal. If you're on a Windows box, that is going to be a tool that you're going to want in your arsenal for sure. And not only like out of the box, oh, sweet, I have it installed, but you're going to want to improve your settings, customize it to you, add some profiles to it. So can you tell us, like, what is some of the stuff that you can do with profiles, and why would someone use that?
Yeah, so profiles is really like a way for you to organize like all like the shells you have. Like, so like out of the box, we have a profile for command prompt, Windows PowerShell, and if you have PowerShell 7, PowerShell 7's there, Ubuntu via WSL, and really like with each profile, you can just tailor it to the way you want your terminal to look like, make it home to you in terms of like all the cool color customizations, UI customizations, and also like just add things that help you reduce toil and make your life easier. Like for example, like if you know for a fact that you're going to be SSHing into something a lot or running like a common command, you can set up a profile so that you can pretty much like when you open that profile up, it will automatically launch that SSH. So you don't have to like manually type in SSH, or like, if it turns out that you got to, like run some kind of npm command for like a project, you can customize your profile so you start off in the repo for that project and just, run that npm build right away.
That's what it's all about. So what are some of the UI improvements that you were talking about earlier? What were some of the UI improvements you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, some of the UI improvements we're talking about are just things that we can layer on top of your shell. So Suggestions UI is one of them. It basically is a fancy autocomplete menu, which can take a bunch of suggestions and also take in a bunch of sources for suggestions. So for one example I showed today was with tasks. Tasks are basically it's basically like a concept where you tie in a command that you'd use often. Like for example, if I know I'm gonna like do a git log and like add some pretty print stuff like to the end of it, I can save that as a task and then have that task appear in the suggestions UI. So every time I feel the urge to run like that git log command, I don't need to type in like all those characters. I can just like open up the suggestions UI, click on it, and it just appears.
Okay, that's pretty sick. And that's what I like about adopting a tool that's supported like VS Code and Windows Terminal. Is like you can invest the skills now, and it's just going to keep getting better over time.
That's really the goal of what we're trying to do. We're trying to reduce toil for developers and IT pros.
Dude, shout out to developers and IT pros and everyone. We're at the PowerShell conference, so shout out to all the PowerShell people out there. And one thing that I've been talking about a little bit is Azure Cloud Shell. I mean, how sick is that, dude? That you can like run Windows Terminal and then like have all your stuff in Azure be there for you.
Yeah, like I think the funny thing is like the Azure Cloud Shell stuff. It was made like way before I started as a PM.
Oh yeah.
But I think historically, like that was like way back when the terminal team was like under like the Azure org. So like that part of like I think Azure gave us like a really big push for us to like make the Azure Cloud Shell profile appear by default. So we reduced the toil of like users who use Azure Cloud Shell because it's right there. You don't need to like manually connect.
So I know that you're a good fit for the Windows Terminal team because obviously the program works well, but like at this point with things, a lot of times we like things to look nice. And I gotta say, man, based on your shoes, I can tell you have a style to you, man. I love your shoes.
Thanks.
Are you a sneakerhead or no?
No, dude. I just like honestly, I think I bought these shoes like three years ago. It's just literally like our Hirachi Airs.
They look sick to me. I mean, I'm
just
an old guy, so
it just works well with the outfit. Like honestly, I think like my friends like have this recurring joke around me that like I will always wear a shirt that's like 2 sizes like bigger than what my actual size is skinny jeans. It's just like it's a really, it's just an interesting looking frame. Yeah.
I like it, man. Nice. So earlier before we started recording, I was talking about how you're pretty lucky. You know, there's a lot of PMs out there, and the thing about Windows Terminal is it's totally free to use, right? Like you just get to add value to people's lives, and that's kind of like your job. So does that feel kind of nice?
It is, and I think like, you know, super grateful I kind of landed in this role really, because like I think it's like very rare for like, you know, people to like be at companies that like can affect like the world and also work on a product that like is seen like, you know, throughout the world. Because like Windows Terminal, we're the default terminal like for the Windows OS. So like we're there like, you know, in every Windows.
Yes, that's exciting. Did you think your career was going to kind of be like out there like that?
Honestly, no. Like I didn't really expect that. Like honestly, like if I look back, like I think I can't math right now, but I graduated college in 2018. I would not. Yeah, honestly, didn't expect to end up where I am today. Because like actually, funny story. Like I grew up in like Honolulu, Hawaii. Actually, so I've been in Hawaii like for most of my life. I graduated the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and like after like that, you know, after I did that, I started as a software engineer at IBM for 2 years, and like looking back, like I didn't expect to end up like at Microsoft, like, you know, after that. So it's, you know, really grateful like to be here. It's a whole new experience.
It totally is. I mean, you just met this weird guy yesterday, and now you're like having to talk to him in a busy bar. It's like it is part of work. What the heck?
Yeah, like I'm really hoping your sound filtering's like good, because like there's a lot going on right
loud,
now.
I know, and I have headphones on, so I can hear my voice really clear. And then I'm like, oh wait, he probably can't because it's a dance party.
Right.
But awesome. So what's your experience been so far at the conference? Like, I know it's kind of your first time amongst the PowerShell team, and I was talking to Danny Maertens, and it's a similar thing where it's like, yeah, the PowerShell community is like technically like your customers, but you have many others and many people who are using Windows Terminal in different ways.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been like seeing the PowerShell community?
Honestly, I really like the fact that y'all seem really close-knit. Like, it's really, y'all are really approachable. Like, I literally just, before this call just started, I literally sat down and, like, a whole bunch of people around me, and they just, you know, it was really positive vibes, warm welcomes, and everyone's just really easy to talk to. And I'm so, I'm so happy that, like, this, like, PowerShell conference is a thing, because I think in the past, like, 20 or so minutes, like, I talked to so many people that are not only, like, you know, based in the U.S., but also based, like, internationally. And I give huge props to y'all. You really hustled like from all the way in for like, you know, on the other side of the world, all the way here, just to like come to like this conference. Really awesome.
Yeah. Shout out the community. It's pretty sweet. There's been a trend recently this week that I kind of talk to people, and for some reason or another, we talk about how one of the things we like about the community is that people are sort of allowed to be themselves. And that inevitably ends up into me saying, real recognize real. Like when you see someone being their authentic selves, you're just like, it resonates. It's awesome. And I got to say, that's one thing I noticed about you, man. You're just like so awesome. You got a great vibe. Just, I want to support you, and I'm not really that invested in when I'm on Mac, and I'm sorry.
It's fine, yeah.
But, you know, I might go back. If I do, I'll send a cool screenshot.
For sure, yeah. I look forward to that day.
Okay. I'm going
to be scanning your Twitter and waiting for that screenshot.
All right. It'll be there. But really appreciate getting to chat with you a little bit. I think it'd be really cool if we did a longer episode in the future, dive into some of these things more, maybe learn a little bit more from your journey and some of the challenges you've experienced. But
yeah,
appreciate you joining me. And let's go party to this techno music.
All right, thanks, man. Have a good one.
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast Bar Sessions. I am joined on the last night. It's Thursday night. A lot of people are going home tonight or tomorrow. I'm joined with none other than Fred Weinmann. How are you doing?
Andrew, I am doing most marvelously. I have just finished, or well, almost finished, 4 days of bragging about my toys to an target audience that didn't run away fast enough. What could have been better?
All right, Fred, the floor is yours. You said toys, you said new things. What's going on? What projects do you have that you want to tell other people about?
Well, let's go with my latest toy. I mean, it's a bit of an experimental thing. It's not fully stable yet, not where I want it to be, but the concept is something I think PowerShell has been lacking forever. And that is, I want localization for tab completion. Like we have some localized help capability in PowerShell, but that's very dense.
So by localized, do you mean like language?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like imagine you've got this get child item command, and now you can tab complete it and get in the tab menu at least Mandarin or German or maybe a description of what the parameter is doing. We could be doing a lot more to make it native to the language of the user. PowerShell is already really powerful compared to other languages in providing something linguistically working, like where you think what you want to do and your commands are kind of matching that thought if you're thinking in English.
So, right. So sounds like some interesting challenges. I think I don't really have the same perspective as you on that because I only speak English. But as someone who speaks multiple languages, how is that something you could see being really helpful for you?
For me personally, myself, no, I speak English as well as German.
Right.
So for me, that's not much of a pain point. On the other hand, in many areas, many countries, language education is kind of not the main focus. So especially junior admins are less likely to be fluent in English. I mean, most in IT, we kind of have to learn English as we go, so we get more proficient over time. But that basically has us excluding all the beginners, which is, statistically speaking, the majority. But it gets worse when we look at one small country on the world called China. In China, admins, even senior admins, routinely, apparently, don't speak English or do it very brokenly and not well. So most of my localization requests for PS Framework localized messages come from China.
Interesting.
So expanding on that a little bit, my main project, PS Framework, provides logging and messages. Like you can have a warning message on screen, and it's also going to be logged. And that already natively supports language files, so you can have languages on screen in the language of the speaker, of the console user, and still have your preferred logging language be uniform across all platforms. So that's where most of the communication comes, and it's really heavily focused on Chinese.
Cool. Interesting.
And let's be honest here, that's not exactly only a couple of people there.
Yeah, definitely. Big market there. It's just interesting. Different people, different places, different challenges that we're all dealing with. But yet there is one beacon of light, and that is Fred Weinmann looking to automate away your problems. If you have a problem, there's pretty good likelihood he's created a module for it. And while I love shouting out the efforts of the community at large and whenever we get in masses, I do think that I need to take the time to say thank you to our prolific project creators, such as Fred. So seriously, Fred, really the PowerShell community is elevated technologically with your contributions. And not only to say that, good sir, you're also a really kind person. And it's a great fusion of skills to have someone really who knows their stuff and is also just a really good person.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I've been talking about our shared history a little bit this week with people. I gave a talk to OnRamp and sort of talked about my progress through my career and whatnot and my origin story. And I also did a talk on pair programming and how it's kind of a good chance to teach other people. And I referred to an interaction we had back in probably 2018, right? 2017, 2018.
18, probably.
Yeah, you had a module, and still do, PSUtil, and I contributed a command to it, and you were kind enough to get on a call with me, share your screen, show me how things worked, and chat about it. So really appreciated that, and it's sort of, now I'm at the spot where I'm sort of teaching others that, hey, this is useful, and I'm using that same technique to empower others.
And I really appreciate the impact you have on the community. Oh, and by the way, your command is still in there and still in use.
Let's go. Select PSF function code. Was that the name of it?
Yep, that's the one.
Look at this memory. I'm an elephant.
Grabbing through code. And it is still something I use when I want to inspect things in my code. Because let's be honest, my memory is about the least reliable thing about me. So I'm kind of focusing on information gathering tools to remind me.
I am with you there, man. I don't know, maybe I'm getting older. I mean, I know that there's a correlation whenever I don't sleep well. My memory's not as good. But I find myself, even before that, like, I don't want to have to spend brain space remembering things. I'd like to automate the problem away. And if I need to refer back to it, create some good documentation to sort of get me up and running quickly. And I like to see that approach.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest here. That's the main reason all of my templates for modules require proper written help on every single command, internal ones included. That's kind of like a gift to my future self. Even if nobody else is likely to have a look at it. But
you're a giving person. Now, that's one part of a project. What else do we have? What other tool do you want to talk about?
Well,
the floor is yours.
Actually, one tool is in use by almost every single person in the PowerShell world called PS Script Analyzer.
Oh.
And there's been a few moderations there, a few things that I wish that would be more flexible. One of them I managed to add as a contribution recently, and that is the PS review unused parameter check, not traversing into the script blocks of their object and for each object, or other commands that have a similar functionality. Now, there's another rule for variables you declare inside of the function that has the same problem and has not yet been fixed. So that's going to be my next one. There's also going to be two more that are personal opinionated things that I am very happy to try to share with everybody else that an opinion is justified. I mean, okay, now I have fairly strong opinions, but I have a strong allergy against scope boundary violations.
Okay.
So I want the PS.
So what does that mean? Code boundary.
Let's say you've got a function in a script, and you have a variable in that script that is outside of the function. Now, if your function needs to have access to the variable, there are two ways to go about that. Either you pass it in through a parameter, or you just refer to it by name. If the variable doesn't exist in the function, it's going to look in the parent scope for it. That is violating the scope boundary. In my opinion, all information a function needs should be received through parameters and returned as output. There might be a few exceptions to that I fully acknowledge. For example, when you do logging and you want the target logging path not be passed through everywhere, I can understand for things like configuration values. So I'm planning to exempt like script scope variables from that. But everything else should go in through parameters. This makes it a lot easier to migrate the function later. So
Fred, keep fighting the good fight, man. And honestly, this what we're getting into, we need to have you back for a full episode to really dive into some of these things and break them down for people and to let them understand your perspective a little bit. But we're here for tools. Next cool tool you want to talk about?
The last one on the script analyzer front: don't use break and continue outside of loops.
Don't use break and continue outside.
It will kill your entire script with maximum pain because it will just end with exit code 0. Everything went well. Break and continue are intended to break a loop. So you should only be using them in a loop without causing massive impact. I mean, in an absolute majority of cases, that would be a true detection. And for those exemptions, we can exempt the rule. So I think that would be a good one.
Okay.
Other than that, completely new topic change for a really long time problem I'm trying to solve together with one of my customers funding the dev time, which I very much appreciate. And I will be able to share that. And that is using PowerShell to define and verify group policies. I know old-prem technology, but many still have that, at the setting level. All we have for generally available PowerShell tools, if you don't go to proprietary solutions, is, backup and restore. And the Active Directory Management Framework project can already do that. It can also detect when somebody tampers with the group policy of the deployment, but I want to be able to define all the settings from PowerShell and to analyze them. Settings conflicts for creating and copying group policies for whatever else we want to do with it. Currently, we just have this one big container and we can't look into it. And that's what I want to fix fundamentally.
Fred, you're on the right path. I'm supporting you every step of the way. And I look forward to seeing what's next from you.
Don't worry. I will very much be happy to brag about my future toys as well.
People are listening right now. You can have them run one command on their computer. What is the one command you have them run? And why is it install module?
Actually, it's install PS resource or PS framework.
I set you up for that, Fred, and you nailed it.
But kidding aside from that, I would totally recommend new PSF support package.
What's that?
Whenever somebody's script goes wrong and the person that wrote it isn't the person in whose hand it went wrong, but the coworker, we usually only get back like, hey, script broke, fix it. If you're lucky, we get a screenshot.
Yeah.
So what new PSF support package does, it grabs your input history, your console screenshot, PowerShell errors, logging messages to PS framework, the imported module with version and path, the imported assemblies with path and version number, and a bit more metadata context, and creates one data dump with all of the contents.
I love that. Fred, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me over.
It's been great to chat with you. We got to get you back in the future to chat about your projects. Cheers and have a great rest of your night.
You too, Andrew.
Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast Bar Sessions. And I am joined with none other than Merill Fernando, Microsoft Entra PM, and Clayton Tyger, newly founded Microsoft MVP and man of the people amongst the community. How are we doing today?
So excited to be here. It's been an awesome week, and to top it off, I get to finish it off with the PowerShell podcast. So, how can my week get any better?
Fair. Clayton,
I really can't. I'm doing great. It's been such a fun time seeing everybody, seeing some repeat people. So it's been just a ton of fun.
And I'm excited to see you both get to meet, because I know, we've all been friends online, but you two in particular have collaborated a lot. I know you've interacted a lot online, and now you get to kind of seal the friendship in person. How's that been?
Exactly. Yeah, it's been awesome. Like I've been new here. Clayton was with me throughout the week as well. So having a familiar face was really good. And he's a PowerShell sort of veteran for the summit. So he's been showing me the ropes, introducing me to more folks, and it's been an awesome experience with Clayton.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, he flies all. How many hours did you have to fly to get here?
Oh, I can't even remember.
Don't remind him. He has to go back.
Exactly.
Back, yeah.
And it's been so awesome. Actually, get to meet him in person. I didn't think it'd ever happen. I mean. And we got lucky enough that it did get to happen.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I know that you're a busy guy in the Entra world, and at Summit this week. What talks were you presenting this week?
So I did two. The one was on Graph PowerShell, which is what Microsoft sponsored me to fly me over here to talk about. And the other one was on Meister. It's an open source project I've been working with Clayton and MVPs from Germany, Fabian and Thomas. And we timed it to be released this week at conference day. So it's been exciting.
That is exciting. Now, I'm seeing PMs at Microsoft, and I'm always honestly very impressed at the way they conduct themselves, at the way that they are able to communicate about complex problems and be aware of the technical challenges and kind of juggle it all. So I'm wondering, you kind of live in that space. You talk about challenges and stuff you're working towards all the time. Is it easy to do talks about that stuff because you're so in the weeds, or do you still have to prep, and is it kind of stressful? Or
Oh, yes. Yeah, you still need to prep, especially if it's something that your team has been working on, like Graph PowerShell. I need to make sure the other PMs are across what I'm going to say. So we do our decks before and get it reviewed, make sure we're saying and being consistent on message. But I can talk about Graph for hours if you want me to. And it's something I do throughout the day. But little bit of both. But it's always good to be prepared.
So I'm going to ask you both. We're talking about Graph. Let's start with you, Clayton. What is your favorite command?
I'd say connect MG Graph, because that's how it starts.
Yeah. Okay. Creative answer. I like it.
Yeah.
Merill, what's your answer?
My favorite these days has been the invoke -graph request. So
Okay.
I can call any graph API with that. But my next new favorite thing that I just learned recently is the -online parameter. which lets me open up straight into the docs page of whatever commandlet. So it's not something I've used a lot, but I used to just go into Google and search like an idiot, typing in the name of the command.
Yeah.
Now I know how to use get help to do that. So you learn, you think you know PowerShell, but yeah, you learn new things every day. And
Yep, there's a lot to learn about it, but when you give yourself the opportunity to be amongst other people, and you can learn things you didn't even know you didn't know.
Absolutely, yes. I learned so much this week. Things like during Justin's session about using the using and the namespace. I come from C#. I've seen it. I know about it, but I didn't know that until Justin showed it the other day. So
Justin knows a lot of cool stuff.
He does.
Yes.
Definitely does.
Next question for the both of you, starting with you, Clayton.
Okay.
You've had a good time this week. You've learned a lot. You've seen some good sessions.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen some lightning demos. You've seen keynote speak. What is one tip you would give the audience? It could be based on stuff you've seen this week, or it could be something that's like near and dear to your heart. What is your tip for the audience? Guide them in the right direction here, Clayton.
Connect with other people, no matter what. No matter how much of an introvert you are, just talk to people. Even just kind of walk up and kind of just say hi. That's all it takes. I was actually talking to someone yesterday morning that she said she's very much an introvert. Didn't say she didn't like talking to people, but it's just nerve-wracking talking to people that she doesn't know or may know a lot more than her. So, that kind of I don't say awkwardness that can happen when you first come up to someone that if you're not used to talking to other people. But honestly, she said hi to me and we started talking about she was on on-ramp and she was doing awesome. She was loving it. So
Who was that?
I can't remember her name. It starts with a D. I want to say Dana, but I'm not 100% sure. Like super nice. It was great talking with her. But I'll say it was early in the morning, so I was a little tired.
I mean, honestly, we meet so many people here. It is very hard to remember everyone's name.
Yeah. I am so bad with names.
Same. As you can tell.
So
Yep, I can feel that. The only reason I remember people's names, and I try to here, because I have I know some people maybe know me outside of just being here at the conference. So I try and write people's names down and sort of the interaction we had, because I think it's really helpful, especially if someone's newer to the community. Whenever I call people by their names, they feel like, oh, it's actually kind of personal. Oh, it's not just someone just being nice, waving again. It's like, oh. But yeah, there's a lot of names. I'm definitely struggling.
And I do that same thing. We'll all write down. It was early in the morning, so I didn't. And also more awkward if I did it right then.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not trying to call you out. Right. Just thinking about the whole so many people thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and everyone's so nice. There's no reason to be, afraid to talk to someone. Everyone is super nice here. There's nobody that you shouldn't talk to.
Can you give us a little bit more of a preview of what Meister is?
yes, absolutely. So it's a test automation framework. It's built on top of Pesta. And I was so happy to see so many Pesta sessions at the conference. We even had a 3-hour workshop on the first day. So I'm trying to bring Pesta. We used to use it for testing our PowerShell modules itself and maybe doing a little bit of infrastructure as code. I'm trying to introduce Pesta to a wider audience of IT admins and cybersecurity folk to test your cloud infrastructure, not your infrastructure, your cloud SaaS systems. So basically bringing it to a new world, to a new audience. Pesta is a bit geeky, it's very, it's good for devs, but not that great of an experience for admins. So with Meister, we've sort of done some work to make it a lot more approachable for new people coming in and not intimidated with that. But yeah, it's basically a way to make sure your cloud config, especially security config, is what you think it is. So being able to write hundreds of tests and have it running every day and keeping your cloud tenant secure. That's in a short nutshell what it is.
Just a weekend project.
Yeah.
a couple
it took us months. We've been building this for a few months over the last year.
Clayton, what's your tie in there? Because I remember, I might know a thing or two, but what you have to do with that?
So I honestly helped out more of like just giving feedback, looking over code, kind of giving ideas and such, like, things like coming from the IT admin side as well. I kind of gave that perspective. The actual hard coding, not me.
Clayton was involved right from the start, so I pulled him in. I saw when he did the automated lab that all the fancy, nice things, and this is all graph anyway. So he was on our internal chats and lots of good feedback, encouraging us. And because when you're building it, you just have your internal perspective, and he was really good at being sort of like the voice of the customer for us, giving us feedback.
And I will say it was very hard not to tell anyone anything. Like,
yes, I was about to write you out. Yeah.
I'd never said anything. It wasn't until the night before, I was like, you got to check out Merrill's.
Yeah, and you were like whispering it, like you were saying. I was like, "What is he announcing? Right. What is going on?"
I was like, it was so hard because I knew how great this was. I'm like, this is just going to change it. Like, it's so easy to run. There's even people in the session that ran it on their tenant right during the session.
That is very exciting. Yeah. I thought you were it might be a product name change of some variety.
Again.
yes, but no.
I loved Michael's acronym definition for Entra. I don't know if you saw it posted on the Slack channel.
Yes.
I'll need to tweet that. I got his permission to tweet it. So
yes.
I'll keep that as a surprise and share it tomorrow.
Yeah, check out Merill on socials and Clayton as well. But Merill, where can people find you on social media? Because you do post a lot of good stuff. And I want to talk about it before we go off. Your newsletter that you put out, but where can people find you and sort of get started with all those?
I'm actually everywhere.
Yeah, it's a job.
on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I also have a profile on Threads and Mastodon where I try to post stuff. But a lot of the conversations with cybersecurity is still on Twitter. That's where people are chatting and talking and discussing. So that's why I'm a bit more active. With the other places, it's more about posting, sharing the regular updates with folks. But I do reply when people ask or post replies there. So, yeah, those are the two big ones.
Awesome. Clayton?
I'm on all of them as well. CLATENT.
Clayton.
Yeah.
Clayton Entertainment, sort of?
Basically, yeah. Actually, that's what it was way back in the day when I actually had like mixed CDs and stuff way back. Like, remember I mentioned about like a rapper kind of thing?
The rapper kind of thing.
That's where
we want the tapes. We want the tapes.
So I could probably find some playlists from them.
Yes, we will take that. Now, Merill, I mentioned in passing the newsletter. What is the newsletter? What can people expect to find from it? Who is it meant for? And where can they find it?
Absolutely. So it's entra.news, and that's the website itself.
Simple.
It's entra.news. Really simple to remember. It's a weekly newsletter I do. I send it out on Sundays, Australia time, which is about Sunday here. It's almost coming up to a year. I started when the Entra name was launched. And I try to highlight a lot of the community work there. There's so many awesome MVPs, cybersecurity folks that share tools, blog posts, videos. So I try to put all of that together. And for anyone in identity, any admin in M365, it's a really good newsletter because you'll see something interests you, you can read it. And that's basically the goal, to highlight a lot of what the community is doing to be sort of that source.
And it's extensive.
Oh, it is.
It's not like, he found 3 things this week. Oh, that's so great. No.
It takes you a week to review it.
Yeah.
Like, I was surprised when I started doing it. Will I have content every week? That was my first thing. And let me try and see. And I get so many new content. Like, this is just content in the past week. I don't post stuff that's been published a week before. It's everything for that week. And there's so much.
Well, awesome. Well, to the both of you, it has been a pleasure getting to meet you in person. Clayton, seeing you again.
Definitely, man.
Had a lot of fun. Look forward to continuing our relationship and maybe seeing you at future conferences.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another not bar session, because we're not at the bar, we're at the conference. We stepped away for a minute from some fantastic lightning demos, I believe. And I'm joined with none other than Mike freaking Robbins and Sean the Dawn Wheeler. Welcome to the podcast yet again.
Thanks, Andrew.
How's the week been, Mike? You did On-Ramp this year. I think we talked to you was you and Jeff at the same time?
Yeah, actually it was. It was maybe a
month ago?
A month ago or so.
Yeah, and so Jeff has historically done the on-ramp program. This year, bringing you in to do it with you, and the next year, you're leading the show. So what was your expectations going into the week, and how did it kind of measure up against that?
So I think I anticipated more PowerShell. We only really had one day of PowerShell, although we had Pester and things that are PowerShell, but not the core language. So we're going to make a few changes next year and a few adjustments, but it's one thing I believe in doing is you go with something and then you iterate.
That's it. I think we had that sort of sentiment. I was in the on-ramp a little bit today. I gave a talk at 9 a.m. and then was listening to Sydney afterwards, and that was one of the sort of takeaways I've seen. But now that you're done with the week, you feeling rejuvenated, or are you more on the, wow, I just talked a lot this week?
So I'm a little tired, but I feel better now because my flights coming out were pretty rough, so I was tired the first day anyway.
Yeah.
But I think next year, since I'll be running the track, I'll actually fly out a day early, just so I'm not so tired on the first day.
What was your favorite moment of the week?
So I actually really enjoyed Anthony Nocentino's
Yeah.
container and Kubernetes session. And so Anthony is the only Microsoft MVP in Mississippi. And if you haven't had him on the podcast, you should definitely have him.
I think I've talked to him a few times about it, but I don't know if maybe I didn't reply or he didn't reply. But yeah, I definitely need to. He's been a supportive guy, knowing his container stuff for so long. I need to get some more container talk on the podcast. But Sean, what about you? Favorite part of the week?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I had fun in my sessions. I did a couple of talks for on-ramp, and like the first one was the fastest 30 minutes in my life. I swear it would only 5 minutes and I was out of time, seemed like. But no, there a lot of good sessions. I'm a little partial. The Cloud Shell talk with Jason Helmick and Stephen Judd was a hoot. The two of them together, it was just a lot of fun, and a lot of cool features coming in Cloud Shell. So,
I just talked to Danny Maertens a little bit. I think we touched on Cloud Shell.
Yep.
On Tuesday, he did a little presentation using Cloud Shell on his phone, run some stuff on Michael's computer. Fun times. If you had one tip, and we'll start with you, Mike, one tip that you'd give someone out there listening who's not here this week, maybe it can be related to PowerShell and some things you've seen this week. Maybe it can be related to something that's kind of been on your mind. But what's your one tip for the people out there?
So the one tip is actually a tip I meant to give in on-ramp and forgot about it. So I'll give it to everybody. So you can actually run get command, pipe it to get random, and pipe that to get help and learn a random command per day.
That is so funny. At breakfast today, my former coworker and podcast guest, Graham Stringfellow, they were talking about the PowerShell tips module by Dan Schroeder, Deadly Dog. They were talking about that, and Graham said, I have a PowerShell tip for you that Andrew taught me before he got into all this. And I was like, oh, this is a joke. He's going to bust me a little. No, but it was actually the same thing. It was for get help about _ and then pipe that to get random. So you get like a random conceptual doc a day kind of thing. But yeah, that's a good tip.
So I know Graham's read my PowerShell 101 book,
yeah.
So that tip is in there. So
there you go.
Not saying he got it from there, but anybody who's read that probably already knows the tip.
Yep. I think that's one of those good ones that definitely worth coming back to.
I would say get involved in the community. Find a user group that you can connect with. And it doesn't have to be local. There's several that meet online. You host one in Gainesville, and you have a virtual one, 2 a month, but one's virtual, so it's easy for anyone to join.
Yep.
Research Triangle, PowerShell Users Group, is always online with theirs.
Yep.
Doug Fink out of New York does his all online too. So they're a great resource and a great networking opportunity. You can learn a lot, but you can connect with other people and build those relationships.
So important. And yeah, I did a talk today called, I think, Welcome to the PowerShell Community. that's one of the things I talked about is you got to get involved in some way, and user groups are a fantastic way to do that. PowerShell.org/calendar is a great place to see upcoming user groups. Listening to podcasts is also great, obviously. Hey, you're here right now. You're hearing these words. But there's also a lot of times there can be some opportunities for engagement on social media too if you're there. I think that social media is a little wild, and one that I kind of recommend to people is check out LinkedIn. Find some other people who are into PowerShell. Check out their stuff. Maybe if you're feeling like you're ready, maybe you post little things here and there, what you're dealing with, what you're learning, and start to sort of form those communities. And then my favorite benefit of the in-person, or sorry, not in-person, but the actual meeting, like a meetup virtual, is getting to talk and have time and learn things and say something in chat. And then, oh, there's someone else who has some experience in this, and they give you a solution. And you can really save a ton of time with the things you will learn at something like a user group.
Yeah, many of the user groups are also recorded if you live in a time zone that's not really good to watch it live.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, I'm not sure when they started recording the PowerShell Summit videos, but many of the previous PowerShell Summit events and PowerShell Conf EU are available on YouTube.
Yeah, there's a bunch. It's funny because PowerShell, there's always new stuff that's awesome, but a lot of times those core concepts and the videos that worked whenever we were coming up and getting good are still completely relevant and helpful. So definitely check out previous year's stuff. You can learn a lot from it, and trust me, there's enough content. And if you're into PowerShell, if you go to some of these channels and start looking through their library, like we'll say PowerShell Summit since we're here, you're going to find a lot of very interesting talks. You're going to learn new things, and maybe take it back to your work and have your boss say, good job, here's a pizza party. Who knows? Gentlemen, if you had to pick one module or one project that you've heard about this week, bonus points if you hadn't heard about it before, what is the one module you'd plug right now? I didn't say it was going to be an easy interview.
No. So it's not a module I heard about this week because I've been in on-ramp all week. But of course, I work with the AZ PowerShell module all day, every day, with over 6,000 commands. It has if you install AZ Preview, which a lot of people are not familiar with, we ship all the GA and Preview modules every month. And we ship 2 major versions per year. But I'll give you another module as well. So I use PoshGit all day, every day, so I can see the changes in my Git repo from the command line.
All day, every day. I like that. You were ready. Your polished answer. Sean, you got to follow that up.
Oh, gosh. How do you follow that? I didn't sit in a whole lot of sessions that weren't to the PowerShell team because I was there to kind of help support them. So I can't say that. I can't think of anything.
Just do what Mike did and just plug something that you worked on recently.
Well, so I will plug. If I'm going to plug something, I'll plug something.
Let's plug it. Plug away. Plug away.
And this came up because I was really surprised. I forget who exactly I was talking to, but I was surprised they had never heard of $PS style.
Oh.
And all the things we got to talking about customizing your prompt and doing ANSI escape codes for colorizing things and all that kind of stuff. And I mentioned $PS style, and he'd never heard of it. And this was somebody that is pretty expert in PowerShell. Anyway, so what I'll plug is my PS style module. So $PS style was introduced in PowerShell 7.2. So it's not available for Windows PowerShell 5.1. Well, with my module, now it is. So
you mapped it, sort of?
I recreated the whole object as a class that the module exports. There's actually no code, no commandlets. It just exports $PS style. And so if you have stuff like that in your profile, you just have to see in your profile, you can check to see if I'm running on PowerShell 5.1, load $PS style. If I'm running on 7.2 or higher, I don't have to. And all of those $PS style things that you do in your profile script just work.
Hard to beat it.
So I'll tell you where the PS style is beneficial is if you want to use a light terminal and you want to change the colors. And actually, there's a document on that, so you can copy and paste that into your profile. So what I do in Windows Terminal, if the name of the terminal is PowerShell ISE, I have an if statement in my profile, and my profile is available publicly, by the way, and it actually sets those colors, because some of the colors are very hard to see on like a white background instead of black by default.
Good tips. Yeah, check out PS Style. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, Mike Robbins, Sean Wheeler.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers. Welcome to another episode of the side sessions of the PowerShell podcast. I know we had a lot of bar sessions. We're not at the bar. We're at the conference. We stepped away for a minute because I could not turn down the opportunity to interview these two fine folk right here. I am joined with Prasidh Arora and Danny Maertens. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
Prasidh, it's my first time meeting you or seeing you, and it's been fantastic to meet you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm Prasidh. I'm a senior PM at Microsoft. I primarily work on 3 products: Windows Admin Center, Azure Arc, and Windows Server, a lot of which have a lot of PowerShell overlap. So really great to be here and excited to talk to you.
Awesome. And I do want to tap into more of that overlap with PowerShell. So with Windows Admin Center, why is PowerShell relevant there?
Yeah. So Windows Admin Center at a high level is the modern replacement to all of the UX that you saw in Windows Server. So, when you RDP'd into Windows Server, you had these tools like Certificate Manager and Event Viewer and Performance Monitor, and a lot of those tools really haven't been touched since like 2005. And so Windows Admin Center became the modernized replacement to the inbox UX in Windows Server. So it's a remote management tool that gives you all of the familiar functionality that you had in Box, but for you to be able to do remotely from this web-based UX, and it allows us to iterate quickly, release new versions quickly, introduce new features, and make just the entire IT admin management experience better. So your question, why is it related to PowerShell? It is a remote management tool, so you install it in, let's say, server A, and you can manage server B, C, D, E, and E all remotely, and all of the management is PowerShell over WinRM. And so every single command you do, if you want to view your certificates or look at your events, everything goes over PowerShell to your remote server.
So one thing that I've always kind of talked about and enjoyed about the Windows Admin Center was the fact that you can copy and paste the PowerShell that's running. Mm-hmm. Is that still a thing?
Yeah. So within each of our tools in Windows Admin Center, on the top right corner, there's a little PowerShell button. And if you click it, it shows every single script that Windows Admin Center is running directly. It's not like we're hiding or anything or showing any secret sauce. It's just like, hey, Windows Admin Center truly is just running PowerShell. If you wish to take that PowerShell for your own scripting purposes, for your own automation purposes, please do take it, copy it, change it, use it for whatever you want.
And you, first time at Summit, first day at Summit, you're here, and within just a few minutes, you're giving your first presentation at the Summit. At least you gave a lightning demo. What was your demo on?
Yeah. So recently we introduced Windows Admin Center in Azure. So Windows Admin Center primarily has been this on-premises product for all of our on-prem customers, data centers, whatever it might be, use Windows Admin Center on-prem. Of course, customers are slowly migrating to Azure, or they are connecting through Azure Arc, where they're still keeping servers on premises, but are connected to Azure to get all of the cool Azure capabilities. And we want them to still have a consistent experience when it comes to doing OS management. You don't need to go to the Azure portal for your Azure related tasks and then have to switch to some on-prem tool to do OS related tasks. And so we decided to combine these tools and make everything available in Azure. So whether you're using an Azure virtual machine or just have an Arc enabled server, right within the Azure portal, you get Windows Admin Center in Azure. The same tools, the same UX, the same capabilities that you had on-prem, except now available in Azure and integrated well into Azure, right? You get Azure AD authentication. All of our script, UX, all of it is hosted in Azure, so it's significantly faster. It's controlled through Azure RBAC roles. You can deploy it using ARM APIs, Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI. So it's all, well integrated into Azure, so it actually feels like one Azure experience.
And you're saying the UX is the same. So is the interface very similar?
It is the same code, actually. We didn't even decide to rewrite it for Azure. It's opening up the exact same code, except now in the Azure portal, as opposed to some on-prem installation of Windows Admin Center.
Not to get too deep into it, but were there a lot of complications kind of going through that process of getting it to where it is now?
Yeah,
It, I think, took us maybe 2.5 years before we were officially able to GA it on Azure VMs, and it's still not GA on Arc-enabled server. Hopefully later this year it'll actually go to GA. I would say the bigger complication was around identities. Everything in the on-prem land is like, enter your administrative password, be part of the administrators group on-prem. What do you do when you're in Azure when you don't want people just entering random passwords in the Azure portal? And you actually want proper integrated identity with Azure Entra IDs, what it's called now, right? Entra ID identities and RBAC roles. You don't want customers entering local credentials anymore. And then that was the harder problem to solve is customers don't have Entra ID joined machines. They're not connected to Azure besides some Azure VM or Arc-enabled server. How do we still make it such that they still are able to do admin tasks without getting admin credentials? So that was the more interesting, in my opinion, problem that we had to solve.
Well, very cool. It's awesome to see the progress there. Appreciate you showing that to us. And I know that was quite the introduction, and I know we covered a lot there, Danny.
I'd say, wow, that's an impressive rap sheet you got going.
Some big shoes to fill, but Danny Maertens, I know we talked last year. Maybe we talked a couple. I think we did actually talk a couple times as well. Sort of tapped in with the whole PM team. But what have you been up to? How's the week been?
A week has been really good. There's been a lot of, I'd say, in-depth conversations around SSH, PowerShell remoting over SSH, kind of what the future of SSH looks like for Windows. But it's been a really good summit so far.
And what is your job title? What projects are you working on?
Yeah, so I am the senior product manager for various SSH projects. I generally just say Azure SSH, but that encompasses things in Azure, that encompasses things in Windows. So I think of it as the Win32 OpenSSH, which is Microsoft's fork of the OpenSSH project from the OpenBSD Foundation. It's things like Azure SSH, which is our Azure CLI and Azure PowerShell commands around SSH. Things like SSH access for Arc-enabled servers, which I like to just call Shark. So SSH Arc because it's a little bit easier to say. And then various internal kind of projects, either for internal dev teams, internal processes, or things that just aren't publicly released yet for SSH.
That sounds very fun. And I see you often with the PowerShell PM team, but PowerShell users, the community, they're not necessarily your only customer. They're one of probably many different use cases.
For sure. And the way I think about it is SSH is like one of our biggest customers is PowerShell. So yes, I'm on the PowerShell team, but I don't really work on PowerShell that often, right? Most of my time is spent purely on SSH and SSH related projects. And then I quote unquote partner with the rest of the PowerShell team to make PowerShell remoting or other things that we're going to do with a combination of PowerShell or SSH.
Very cool. I remember on Tuesday during the keynote speaks, Microsoft had some awesome presentations, and yours was one of them. And it was very cool. I know I've geeked out about Azure Cloud Shell in the past, but you had a really cool demo. You want to tell us about what you were doing?
Yeah, so it was about a 30-second demo, and we had a laptop on stage that everyone was doing their demos on. And the thing about SSH, I find that SSH isn't always the coolest demo. Like, yeah, I click enter and I'm connected to that machine, but I view SSH really as an enabler to do other things, right? And so it's more about how can you show SSH enabling you to do something cool. And so with the product or the project Azure Cloud Shell, if you're an Azure customer, and if you're not familiar with Azure Cloud Shell, it provides you a browser-based terminal experience, which is just a Linux container that we're hosting behind the scenes. But because it's a Linux container, we can run SSH on that machine, and we can use that to connect to other machines, right? And so we onboarded the laptop that we were doing demos from as an Arc-enabled server. And I know Prasidh's talked about Arc a little bit, but the way I think about Arc is it's bringing the Azure management plane onto non-Azure hardware. And so that could be your laptop or your desktop that you have back in your office. It could be your data center. It could be a machine that's running in AWS, GCP, et cetera, right? So we onboarded this, the machine as an Arc machine. And what that really allows us to do is get access and information to and from that machine into Azure, right? And so now you have that Azure management plane, but for SSH and even for Windows Admin Center as well, you can use that same connection to get access to the machine without a public facing IP. And so without an inbound port, without a public IP address, you can get connectivity to that machine. So I opened up Azure Cloud Shell. I then said my command to SSH into that Arc enabled server. And then I had an SSH session on that server. And so then I was just created a file. But the really cool thing about it is Cloud Shell can run from any mobile browser, and it can also run from a mobile app, right? So I had done all of this just from my cell phone on the stage. So I was standing next to the machine, not at the keyboard, connected to the desktop that we were presenting from, and then created a file all without touching the machine.
That is so sweet. You know, as someone who's been in IT since before the days we had PowerShell and all these cool tools on our phones and wherever we need it, that would have been maybe the coolest thing I'd ever heard, right?
Yeah.
You can solve your job. You can troubleshoot things from paradise.
And, you know, the really cool thing that I like to think about with it is it really allows you to connect from any machine to any machine, right? All you need is a browser and to have whatever other machine you want to connect to as an Arc-enabled server, and you connect, right? It doesn't matter if it's a Windows or Linux machine. It doesn't matter where that machine lives, whether it's at home in Azure, in AWS GCP, in a store, right? It's just hosting doing all the services for the store, right? It doesn't matter. I can go from any machine I can get a browser on to any machine securely.
As long as you have internet.
As long as you have internet, that's true. You know, internet is the crux of everything.
Now, what would somebody's listening to this, they're saying, oh, Azure Arc, that sounds pretty sweet. What's the rollout for that look like? Say you want to start taking advantage of it in your environments.
Yeah, I'd say, Prasidh, feel free to chime in anywhere here as well. We both kind of are half foot in the door with Arc. So the onboarding process is actually really easy, you know, and part of one of my session here is I did the onboarding process of a machine into Arc and then enabled SSH connectivity and connected to that machine. But, you know, if you're onboarding one machine, it's really easy. You can go and copy and paste this code block from the Azure portal. You can go into Server Manager UI on, I think, Windows Server 2022 and newer. You can go into Server Manager UI and just click enable and go through and that enablement process, sign into Azure and onboard individual machines. If you're wanting to do, I'd say, a bulk onboarding, you can also go into the Azure portal, get a script that you can, I'd say, deploy to all of your resources with System Managed Identity to do your authentication. So you don't have to go through and do the flow, the device flow for each individual machine, right? And so
I think I was going to say another at scale one that I see used a lot often. You can use group policy.
Yeah.
People have group policy on server. You can use group policy to onboard all of your servers within a group policy to Azure Arc.
Very cool. And so someone's listening to this. What are some of the costs associated? Not going to ask you for the exact numbers for each or what, but like, what are some of the costs? Where do those come in?
Yeah, at least on the SSH side. So, and let's talk about Arc first, because that's what we were talking about, right? So Arc itself is free. It's free to onboard a machine into Arc. And then you just really pay for the services that you use, right? So if you're using like SSH connectivity, we don't charge for that, right? And so if you're using something like policy or like governance or monitor, right? Those are things that you're going to pay for the usage that you're consuming, but certain services are still free, and that's just the convenience value. You know, you've onboarded us as a machine into Arc. We want that to be the best experience for you to go and manage that machine.
Yeah, it's really, Arc is always designed to be a way to get you to Azure, a way to get you to understand Azure and get access to all of the Azure tooling. So Arc itself will be free. It always is free. And then once you start various Azure tooling, whether it's Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which costs $5 or $10 or $15 a month, or Monitor, depending on how many logs you upload, then you actually pay for the services used on top of it. But then some base things like SSH, Windows Admin Center, there's run command. All of those are like free things that come as part of just, hey, you have an Arc server, use Arc because there's some benefits to it.
Yeah. So it sounds like listeners out there have some easy wins they can kind of look forward to. Awesome. You also gave another talk, right? What was that topic on?
Yeah, so I did the the quick demo during the State of the Shell talk on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I had a session for just kind of what's new with SSH in Azure and Windows. And so on the Azure side, I already kind of talked about what we're doing with Arc. That's where a lot of our development time has been, is enabling that process. We GA'd SSH access to Arc-enabled servers this past year. But then on the Windows side, we've had this really hard push to get OpenSSH installed by default in Windows Server. So starting in Windows Server 2025, SSH will be installed by default. It ships in a very similar way to how RDP would ship on Windows Server, where it's there. It's not enabled by default, but when you enable it, and you can either do that with like Server Manager UI, Start Service, Group Policy, Unintended XML. When you enable SSH, that's when we go and start the actual service. We also have, I'd say, default firewall rules that are there. So by default, SSH isn't listening to everywhere on port 22. Port 22 is only open to private networks and only traffic to our executable, so that you know it's going to be secured by default. And if you're worried about who can connect, we also have added a new as a user group for SSH users. So if you want to define who can actually use SSH in Windows Server, you can do that.
That's exciting. So OpenSSH is going to be in box in Server 2025?
Correct. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting. I imagine
that's been a journey for you for a while.
It has. And we've historically shipped as a Windows optional feature or a feature on demand, right? Where we're considered quote unquote in box, but you still have to do a download to actually enable and use the functionality. And with that, you have to set up your own firewall rules. There's a little more nuance to that enablement. And really the exciting thing about being in Server 2025 by default is a lot of that process is streamlined. And so it's easy as doing a one-line PowerShell command or a one-click to say, yeah, I want to start SSH. And then by default, you're in a secure state, right? And for a user, that doesn't look like that there's much work that goes into that, but there's a lot of work kind of behind the scenes to make sure, yes, it is secure. Yes, we can patch it more easily, right? And how do we keep that more up to date? And we're looking at, historically, we've only updated the inbox version of OpenSSH each Windows release. How can we update that more frequently, keep it more in line with when our GitHub releases roll out? And so we're looking at things like WinGit to be able to do that either on Windows Server, since WinGit is going to be shipping installed in Windows Server 2025 as well. And so there's a lot of exciting new ways to say Git packages, whether that's OpenSSH or even PowerShell 7. There's a lot of new avenues that are really exciting for kind of the future of management.
I agree with you there. It's an exciting time to be in technology. It seems like everywhere we look, there's awesome stuff going on. Danny Maertens, Prasidh Arora, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
No, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
it was a good
thanks
time.
for having us. This was fun.
See you around.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast, PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit Edition. PowerShell After Dark. The PowerShell Podcast is a production of PDQ.com.